So we're going to be working on assignment 6, and you have this single space typed Word document that has a lot of explanations in it. When we're done, I want you to go and read the first part up to dimensioning, and then don't do the dimensioning yet. We're going to work on darkening it in. After I've checked your measurements, I'll give you the go ahead to darken the drawing in. And then next Monday, we're going to do dimensioning, which is a little more complicated. Everybody will have to have an Ames lettering guide, or it's going to make your life very difficult. I have them here to loan out. So if you want to come in, when you come in, you can also get the Ames lettering guide. And then this is what the window drawing looks like. Well, sort of. This is the AutoCAD version of it. So when you look at this drawing, there's a lot of notes on here. You're not putting all these notes on, but there's information underneath the drawing and underneath this part of the drawing. So this is the floor plan of the drawing right here. And so think of this as a freestanding wall. So we've got this wall that's just built and standing up on its own. And this is the elevation. So a floor plan is cut through the walls at about 4 feet high. And when you cut through at 4 feet high, what you're doing is you're cutting through the walls, you're cutting through doors, you're cutting through windows, you're cutting through columns, and then you're looking down at things that are below, which might be cabinetry, could be some tile work that you'd see down below. And then when you, everything that's above is dashed lines. So everything that we cut through is going to be heavy. So this is a wall that we've cut through. And I'll show you on my drawing when I do it. And I drew this in AutoCAD. We're going to draw it by hand. And what I would suggest is, that you download these PDFs before you start drawing. So this is the elevation of this wall. And if you notice the window here, and I'll pull up my drawing, this window is the window through right here. So we cut through the frame of the window and the glass, and then the part right here from here to here is the sill. I'm going to pull up my actual drawing on the camera, but has anybody ever had experience with doing a floor plan drawing? No? Nope. Okay, that's what you're here for. So let me share the camera. And then I can zoom in a little bit better, because when I zoom in on that one, it doesn't zoom in for you guys. Okay, so this is what it will be on Blackboard. The other part, the other written part's on Blackboard now. So I've got my wall drawn down here. Let me get a pencil for a pointer. I've got my wall drawn down here. And so this is the wall. And if I were to transfer the lines up, the window lines line up perfectly with up here. So when you're drawing in AutoCAD, if any of you are in AutoCAD right now, you'll draw the floor plan first, then you'll project the lines up to draw the elevations. And I'll show you how these all line up. In fact, I'll show you on this drawing first. So one thing is, when I give you guys drawings, they're never ever to scale, because I learned very quickly that people like to trace. So if you trace my drawings, it will be totally wrong. They are proportionally correct, but I always print them at a different scale. So I'm going to draw it with a red line. So this right here that I'm outlining in red, that's my wall that I've cut through. And then I've got one on the other side. So that's my wall. This part right here that I'm going to hatch, That's the frame of the window. So that's what holds the glass in place. So that's one window unit there, and this double line between it is the glass. And then from here to here, this little part right here, that's the sill. And then here's the second window. That's my frame. There's my other frame. There's my glass, and there's my sill. So normally every wall that we cut through would be heavy, but we don't make the windows heavy because it's secondary information. So these walls that we cut through are all going to be heavy. The window frame and glass is going to be medium, and we'll get into that after I check your measurements, and the sill is going to be light. So this is how you would draw this bottom floor plan first. And then if I look at how that transfers up, once I get that drawn, then I use guidelines and I transfer my lines straight up. And you'll notice they line up perfectly with the window. I'll do them all. And I would do this in light guidelines. This is what I'm going to demo today, but I want to show it to you on the AutoCAD drawing. So do you see how what I draw on floor plan lines up perfectly with what I've got in my elevation? Does that part make sense to people?
Does to me, Francis. So we're not worried about the casing around the window.
Okay, well, this is the trim around the window. The trim never shows up in the plan. Unless if I wanted to show the trim, if it was something special, I would do a detailed drawing of just this corner. So that's a good question. So this is the frame of the window, and I hatched it in here just so you could tell what the frame was. And this is the glass. That's the symbol for glass. So this is the frame of the window, and then this is the trim. Anybody know what the purpose of the trim is?
To hide the rough work.
Exactly. Because when you put the window in, if you put a window in, you've got, like Nicholas is in my 108 class, you've got to have the opening a little bit bigger than the window, right? And so you can actually fit the window in, and then you've got this rough edge. So the trim actually covers up that rough edge. And lots of times it's decorative too. It's made into a decorative element. This is the sill, kind of doing the same thing, but on the outside it sheds water away from the window. It's tipped. And on the inside, it's usually covering the part of the wall that the window doesn't cover. And it overhangs on the inside usually too, but the inside will be flat. Think of where you put your plants and stuff on it. So does anybody know what kind of window I drew here?
Single hung?
Nope. Nicholas?
Sliding?
Nope. Do you guys know the difference in window types? We get into that in 108. I'll go over it a little bit here just to reinforce it. Say that again?
Glass pane?
No, what kind of window is it? So do you know what kind of windows there are?
I don't.
There's double hung. I'll do a quick window demo in a few minutes. This is called a casement window. So it's hinged on one side, and it would have a crank, and it would open usually out, and the screen would be inside. So again, the hinge, and it would be hinged on one side. So because it's a double unit, the hinges have to be here and here because there's no place for the hinge framework on the inside. So this is a casement window, and after we do this, I'll pull up a PowerPoint and just show you different window types. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw this part first, then we're going to project the lines up. So we get all of our widths. The other line that gets projected up is the edge. So we use our floor plan to draw our elevations. So we get all the widths from the floor plan. It makes you be more accurate. It's quicker. And when you do the exact same thing in AutoCAD, you take these lines and you project them up. And then there's tricks in AutoCAD that you'll learn if you're taking that class on how to do 4 different walls. But the only thing we have to measure are the heights. So can anybody tell me how tall this wall is?
10 feet.
10 feet, yep. I'm trying to get both things in at once. It's not quite working. Sorry for making you dizzy, guys. All right. So how the wall is 10 feet high. And he got that from this measurement right here. How wide is the wall?
I can't really see, it's not
What?
clear.
It's not clear.
5 feet.
12 feet?
5.
Or, oh, 6 feet, right guys? No, that's the center of the window. The center of the window is 6 feet, so the wall is 12.
The wall is 12, yep. So this is the overall width of the wall is 12 feet and the window is 6 feet. Sometimes you have to look in multiple locations to get all of the information you need. So that 6 feet is to the center of the two windows. You typically will draw to the center line of windows. Anybody have a sense why you would do that? Why would you draw? Why wouldn't you draw to the edge, give your dimensions to the edge of the window as opposed to the center line? Think about the contractor. Any ideas? So first of all, you have to have a bigger opening than the window width. So you would have to calculate the window opening. The only time you do it is in brickwork where you have to be very specific about the brick opening. And then you, if he or she, the contractor, changes the window manufacturer and it's maybe a 1/2 inch bigger, and you had dimension to the outside but accepted that change of a different window, your window wouldn't fit in here. And then guess who would be paying for it? Because the contractor would throw it back to you. So you have to be very clear, and you want to go to the center line. Then if the windows change slightly, we're still correct on the center point of where the window is. You guys understand that? Okay.
Not entirely, to be honest. I think I essentially understand that it's to avoid any errors, but kind of lost me on. So I'm assuming if you give him the first measure, not the center measure, like from wherever the edge of the wall is to the beginning of the window, whatever that would be, that leaves more room for error than if you gave him the center of the window?
Yes, it means if you're off by 1/2 inch, the window won't fit. So you want the contractor to figure out what kind of tolerance he wants to slide the window into. And then if he went from Anderson to Pella and the difference was a 1/2 inch wide, the window wouldn't fit. It'd be too big or too small. So if you always dimension to the center of windows, just so that you've got it where you've got whatever size you end up with for your window, it's in the correct location. So how wide is this window?
4 feet.
5 feet. Where'd you get that, Nicholas?
It's up at the top.
Yep, Nicholas is sitting here. 5 feet. It's right here.
Okay.
I also put in a code that says window width, right? So that tells you the window width is 5 feet. So that's why I said you have to go sometimes in 2 locations. If I didn't have the window width up there, I might have a code for the window just down here. You'd have to go look up what the code was from the manufacturer to find out the width to be able to draw it properly. The other things that are on here are, so we've got a 10-foot high wall, and then I put this thing in here, sill height, and I called it SH. Remember that. It's going to come back to you, and I'm not going to explain it to you when it comes back. I'm going to tell you to go back and look at your drawings. So sill height is the distance from the top of the finished floor to the top of the sill. And then the window height is from the top of the sill to the top of the window frame, not including the trim around. These are really important measurements. Sill height can determine, in a kitchen, it has to be a specific dimension to fit your cabinets underneath it, if you want to put cabinets under it. Sometimes in bedrooms, they have to be a certain height for egress windows so you can get out in the case of a fire. So sill height is really important. Window height is also referred to as WH. So when I go out and field measure, that's one of the things that we always get is sill height and window height. We don't care about the trim around. We want to know how big it is just for general purposes, but the sill height and the window height are really important. And you'll notice here, this is 3 feet and 4 feet. So if you look at windows and doors around your house, and as you're driving around the community, you'll notice that the top of the windows and doors almost always perfectly line up with the top header. That won't be the case in stairways, or if there's some kind of decorative, reason for the windows to be larger. But in this case, I used 3 plus 4, I used 7 feet. In older houses, the doors were 7 feet high, and the top of the windows was always at 7 feet high. Newer houses, they're down to 6'8". What is a header? Did I say the word header?
I thought you said if you look around your house and your communities, you'll see that the window height is the same as the height of the top header.
The top of the door.
Top of the door. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I said header. A header is, we're digressing a little bit, but a header is the member that goes across the top of the windows and the doors to take the load that comes down from above and transfer it over to the sides. So that's what a header is. But look at your house. The top of the doors and windows will all line up. And I always tell the people, my neighbors don't know I use them as an example. I should take a picture of their house. They were getting a new door, and they got a beautiful door, the same one I have on my back porch. And they have an older house like I do, so they have 9-foot ceilings. All the doors and windows are at 7 feet high. And they were too cheap to spend an extra $300 or $400 to get the 7-foot high door. So they put a 6'8" high door in. Then they had to put a spacer in because then all their trim didn't match. So there's it's just visually appealing. So look as you're driving around or in your own house, it's easiest to see from the outside. You'll see that the top line of the doors and windows almost always line up. Okay, so this is trim. The notes on here, I put the sill is 2 inches thick. So remember down here, just scoot down a little bit. Down here, this is my sill. That's the same as this right here. But it would project off a little bit, but we're not going to really see it. So that's my sill here. The sill is 2 inch thick up here. The window frame is 2 inches, so I've demarked 2 inches along here for each of the window frames. So the frame goes all the way around. I'm drawing casement windows because they're easier to draw. Someone said slider, or a slider window, it would look slightly different, and I'll show you a presentation on windows. And then the trim around here, I have 4 inches of trim all the way around. And then the sill is 2 inches thick. The other thing that you'll notice is that the window is a rectangle, and then another rectangle in between. Then there's a solid line here, and then 2 more rectangles. What you don't have is this line does not continue across here and here, or here and here. So what you're going to want to do when you're darkening this in after you've gotten it approved, and I'm going to have a check mark for approval, and that will be a graded thing because I do need to see everybody's stuff. You'll want to look at my drawing to see where the lines go through. Like here, the sill goes all the way through, and the trim comes down on top of the sill. Any questions so far? Most of this information in here is just so you understand the drawing. You're not going to draw this. You're not going to write it. We're going to end up dimensioning only this 3 feet, 4 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet, and then the 6 and 12 down here. Okay? Does that make sense? And you can go back and watch this video. I'll get it up. It takes about a day to process. I'll get it up by tomorrow. And you can go watch the video on your own time. So when you print out the assignment, or when you're looking at the PDF online, it'll say for the wall section and for the elevation. When I say the wall section, I'm referring to this part right here. So that would be the plan. For the elevation, I'm referring to this part up here. So an elevation is looking at the face of a building or room, and it's flat. It's the actual dimensions and height. You wouldn't really see it like that in real life, even on the outside of a building, unless you were really far away from the building. And then you lose perspective and you would see it that way. So now I'm going to lay out the drawing. On my paper. So I've got my paper laid out, and at the bottom of this sheet are directions, and it says center horizontally on the sheet, set up the title block, and my scale is 1/2 inch equals a foot. This is pretty light on my copy, but you'll be able to read it when you print it out. So I'm first going to set up my title block. How high is the title block? An inch. Yeah.
Francis, can I ask you a question about, I mean, it seems so simple, but I'm struggling with it. How do you get the paper perfect to your board without it being on the edge? Do you just line it up against your parallel?
Yep. So I'll show you again. I think I showed it probably just the first day, but what I do is if I have a line already drawn, I'm going to match up a line. So what I do is I just come and I've got my parallel here. The paper's got a little curve to it. I just set it up on the parallel. If it doesn't, or your T-square, if it doesn't, I sometimes tip this up a little bit so the paper lines up perfectly. If I've got a line on the drawing like I've already got, you always have to line up the drawing with either the parallel or the T-square. So here, I already drew my line for the title block, so I'm lining it up perfectly on the parallel rule, and then I tape down. So sometimes you have to tip this up a little bit, or give the paper, if the paper doesn't have a little bit of curve to it.
Okay. And it's better to write in our name and date and the title block information after we've completed the assignment, right?
Yeah, because then if you make a mistake, you haven't spent all that time doing that.
That too, yeah.
Some people, though, when we meet in person, they'll do the title blocks ahead of time just to have that done. But you can wait till. So I've got my title block in. So that means I have how much space from top to bottom to draw this on? 10 inches. And how wide's the paper?
8.5.
8.5. So I've got 10 inches by 8.5. Now, the first thing is I want to center horizontally. I want to center so it's perfectly even on the left and the right-hand side of the paper. And I'm at 1/2 inch scale. So how do I find the center of that?
I think last week you showed us how to do it using our triangle, but I had a problem replicating that.
Okay, so this is what I showed you last week. You can take a triangle, and this is one of the few times where it's not resting on my parallel rule. It's not even with my parallel rule because I'm just going from the upper edge of the title block to the upper corner. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw a line. And then I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. Right? So that's dead center of my available drawing space, that 10 inches by 8.5. I was looking for this point right here, but there's another simpler way to do it if you're just looking to center horizontally. And what I do then is I take any scale. So I'm going to take the 1/2 inch scale, and I'm going to pick a number that's even. I'm going to go 20. So I put the 0 at one edge of the paper and the 20 at the other edge of the paper. And then I find what's half of 20? 10. So I find the 10 point and I mark it, and watch this. They both line up. Oops, I'm a little bit off on them, but they both line up. So that's a quicker way. I'm going to erase some of this. That's a quicker way to find the center of the paper. And I'm drawing on Xerox paper, so mine's not going to smear. You want to make sure you use a brush. So I've got the center of the paper. That center is where this line between the two windows will meet. So once I get that in place, my next thing is I want to know where is this positioned above the title block. And if you look down here, it says the wall at full scale is 2 inches above the title block. So I'm going to go 2 inches above the title block. And that's the bottom of my wall. I'm going to draw them darker than I normally would so you can see them. So if I bring this line down, that's the same as this point right here. Do you see that? So now I just need to draw the wall. Now I have to go to my 1/2 inch scale. So if I go to the 1/2 inch scale, we said the wall was 12 feet wide. So what I can do is I can put the 6 feet right on that center point, and then I can mark where 0 is, and I can mark where 12 is. If you can not measure twice, you're always going to be more accurate. So there's my 12 feet. And then you can double check. You can measure. If this space doesn't match this space, you did something wrong. So now the wall is, now I need to put the thickness of the wall. So if I go back to this paper, the wall is 6 inches thick. So I need to come and add 6 inches onto here at 1/2 inch scale. And there's my wall. Now I need to put the windows in. So I'm going to look up here, and the window width is 5 feet, and each of the frame around the entire perimeter is 2 inches. So what's 5 feet? What's half of 5 feet?
2.5 feet.
Yes, 2. Yep, 2.5 feet, or 2 feet 6 inches. So I mark that here. And then rather than measuring 2 foot 6 over here, I'm going to slide the 0 down, and I'm going to go back and measure that 5 feet. So now I've got the edge of my windows in. And now I need to do the frame. And I said the frame was 2 inches thick. So I'm going to come on here and I'm going to measure 2 inches. What I do here is I put the 2 at the center point, and I measure 2, and then I go over to 4. And then here I'm going 2. You would have this all done in light guidelines, not dark like mine is. And do you notice what I'm doing? If these were all guidelines, I don't care if I'm overlapping, because they'll be really light. They're only dark enough for you to see, and then you'll come back later and darken them in. So now I've got that. Next thing I need to do is put the glass in. This one's a little bit harder to read, but if the glass is 2.5 inches over and it's 1 inch thick. If the wall's 6 inches, that means I go 2.5, 1, 2.5. So 1 inch thick is usually the size of an insulated glass panel. So I go 2.5, and then I measure 1. And then I draw my lines all the way through. And again, you would be in guidelines, so it would look just like this. So any questions on that part before we go to the elevation? One thing I've noticed when people are in here working, nobody's sharpening their pencil, their lead holder. These should be sharpened all the time. Like you do a couple lines, sharpen. The only time you don't need them sharpened is with the 4H. And see how nice and pointy that is. Whatever lead came in your lead holder, just take it out, because I don't know what it is any more than you. So I've got this drawn. Now I'm going to go back to my sheet, and it tells me that the elevation at full scale is 1 inch down from the top of the sheet. So I'm going to go to the top of the sheet. And I know that I'm at 1/2 inch scale, but I know that 2/2 inches is the same as 1 inch. So I'm going to draw my line there. That's the top of my elevation. Now I'm going to bring up the sides. And then I'm going to measure down that 10 feet high. So there's the outside of my wall. Now I need to put the windows in. Always easiest to start big and then do detail later. So I'm going to start with the outside frame of the window. So I don't know how far it's going to go. I'm just going to draw it somewhere in there. And remember, I can get the widths, but I've got to measure the height. So my sill height was 3 feet. And then I'm going up to 7 feet. So do you see what I did? I marked the 3 feet. I didn't move my 0 point, and then I marked the 7 feet. So 3 and 4, because you're going to be more accurate and you'll be quicker if you do it that way. Then I draw a line across and across. So now I have drawn that outside frame right here. Now I need to draw out the inside frame. This one. So again, I'm going to pull my line from my plan, and I'm not going to carry it all the way up. I'm going to line up my pencil with that line, and then I'm going to go up here and draw it in approximately where I need it. And you can actually put your pencil right in the groove there to get it lined up perfectly. And I had not transferred my center line. Okay, so I've got the outside frames of my window. Anybody have any idea how, without measuring, how I could find this height, this 2-inch height? Think about the perfect square. If I draw from that corner across, where this line intersects that diagonal, it's going to be 2 inches. And I can do the same at the bottom. So then I didn't have to measure anything. I was even, as long as my widths were correct, I was even quicker than having to measure. So it's all about finding quick ways to accomplish what you've got. I'm just in guidelines right now, so if I didn't have this continuing down, I wouldn't worry about it. The next thing we need to do is do the sill. That one I'm going to need to measure. And that's going to be my 2 inches. And now I'm going to measure the 4 inches for the frame. It hit that same 45 line there, so that means that I'm now 4 inches above. So I'm going to go across, and I'm going to take my 45 and draw another line, and then bring it down. So that's what I'm looking for everybody to do in light guidelines, and meet me either right before class on Monday or anytime between now and then. I'll email you out what my schedule is. You're going to want to email me when you come in, though, because sometimes I get called into meetings, and I want to make sure that I'm here when you show up. I'm not here in the evenings or Saturdays. Anybody have any questions about this assignment?
You said overlapping doesn't matter, right?
Overlapping doesn't matter because you're going to be doing it, like you can see mine from there. You're going to be doing it in very light guidelines. So what lead are you going to use for the very light guidelines? You're going to use 4H lead. 4H lead with your pencil sharpened really sharp, and you're barely going to press on the paper. The guidelines should be so light. I'm drawing my guidelines dark so that you can see them in the video. But the guidelines should be so light that you're the only one who can see them. They're like ghost lines. Never erase guidelines unless they're causing you a problem or they were drawn wrong. You just leave them there. They're kind of artsy. Any other questions? So this is like starting to do real drawing, and then we're going to learn how to dimension, which is it has some challenge. It's challenging. It'll be interesting to do, but you will need. It will make your life so much easier if you have the Ames lettering guide. So when you come in to meet me, you can, if you don't have one, you can borrow an Ames lettering guide for the semester. So all those tools that you're loaned out are supposed to come back at the end of the semester. Any questions? We're fast approaching midterm, which will be October 19th, and midterm will be held here, and you will be in 2 groups. So it'll be some drawing and some question and answers, but it will be here, and we've got enough space. We're quite well spaced out. If you have any issues with that, you can email me, and we can arrange a different time. So are we good here?
I'm good.